Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's Saturday morning. Uh, Hope all is well. I know we are just discussing some of us don't have power because of the storm. Uh, so bear with us. We got pray for other people because there's a thing that's more devastating, I guess, than we all realize it would be. So, but anyway, do we have any questions about anything? Any questions? Anything that come up during the week that may have gotten your attention? Okay, nothing. Um, I saw something. I bought a book a while back, and I didn't start reading, and I started looking at it uh, a couple of days ago. And a very thin little book, very small book, and it's a very easy read. It's called Know Thyself, and but I like it. It's very thought provoking, and also very insightful. And I was hoping we could talk about it a little bit today, at least part of it. It talked about or talks about the difference, or do you think there's a difference in being trained or being educated? What is the difference between being trained and being educated? Anybody giving that any thought?
Well, Ron, into the group, I'll take a stab at it. In one aspect of when you're trained in something, more than opinionated, if I train you, Ron, on how to drive an 18 wheeler and you do not know how to drive an 18 wheeler, it may be more of a fair exchange of liberty between you and I. Yet, if you're being educated, it may not be as much exchange of liberty between um, who knows and who don't know. So if you're training someone, if I'm training someone, even if it's just a deep fried turkey, to me, I feel that the energy of it is there's more of an exchange of liberty between the candidate and the candidate or the candidate and the candidates. Um, Educating someone, you can only educate someone on how you've been educated. Yet training someone, I feel that it opens up it opens up more of a collage of how you train someone. If I'm training you, Ron, I need to know your personality. I need to know what I can say to you that can enhance you and what I can say to you that will discourage you. And if I'm training multiple people, I got to know everyone's personality. So that's my response to your question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, George, for getting us started. Anyone else? Anyone to respond to what George said, or even to my question? Either one. No one's had a thought on this. No one thought about it. Okay.
Good
Um.
morning.
Good morning.
Um, I'll take a stab at responding.
Okay.
I think there's kind of a big difference in training versus being educated. I think training and it depends on what you're being trained for, but training kind of takes you down like a tunnel. You're focused on that particular thing. And everything you're learning is about that particular thing. As opposed to education, which is much more broad and much more designed to help you analyze and think critically about things so that you are able to either offer your opinion, or you're able to think about something and analyze it and then decide what it is that you want to do or you believe or whatever. So
Okay.
So yeah, I think there's a big difference between the two.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, Ron, and to the rest of the group, just in thinking about what was said just a few minutes ago, and just thinking about what I've experienced and coming back Spartanburg, and there's no power. I was trained to keep a half a tank of fuel in your car. By way of my mama and daddy, you empty. I was trained to think like that. I also saw my mama can tomatoes or canned vegetables. And right now, at this very moment in Spartanburg, with power being out, man, I would love to have some canned tomatoes right now, just to get you on through. So that training aspect of it is, I was trained, and I don't know if anyone else has ever heard that, half a tank of fuel, half a tank in your car, that's empty. Always keep a little cash on you. Because right now, with the power being down, Waffle House is open, yet they ain't taking no debit card. Got to keep a little coin on you. And if you don't have any coin on you, how can you reason to get that or barter to get that food? So I think that's a fair example of being trained. Thank you.
Hello.
Ron, I have a comment. I'm sorry, I yield.
You can go ahead.
I yield.
I think when I think about training and education, it goes along more sort of lines of what Audrey said. When I think of training, I think of someone being given more so a set of instructions, or these are rules more so in terms of a situation. It doesn't necessarily mean that the rules have to be adhered to, but you're pretty much given instructions and told what to do. Now, when it comes to education, I definitely think a lot of times what is generally considered as education, even in our education system, is actually training, but not actually presented that way. But you're actually more so being put in a mood to do certain things, certain behaviors, etc. But when I think about what education truly is, education is just more so more information and more understanding, and it has more liberty and freedom because it then allows the person with that information to make a decision with that education. So it's not so instructive from the standpoint where you do this, that, etc. Now, is training important? Absolutely. And then you can even think about it from a situation where sometimes training is necessary and then education comes afterwards, where there is more freedom within that training when there's more understanding. But that's how I see it. Training is more so instructive. Like if you think, for example, George, when you were talking, I thought about basic training. When basic training is taking place, and you can say this about some trainings, the trainer does not necessarily care as much about the person who is being trained, the trainee. It is breaking down that trainee as much as possible. You need to do these particular things. I was thinking earlier, this is what I'm thinking about. Training is more so molding, in a sense. I am molding you, or you're being molded to do this particular thing. Now, is that necessarily bad? No. It's just that the education, when education is in its purest form, it is more, I'm not going to say empowering, but it is, it allows a certain freedom in a sense. Education isn't necessarily pushing you in a certain way, on its own. You may be educated by something in particular, and it pushes you in a certain way. But the more education that actually happens, the more education that actually comes, you're allowed to go back and forth. The more we learn in terms of life, we do things differently. Everyone on this wish they more besides the mere fact that you're actually on this phone. That's what on this phone call. That's how I see education. I'm finished.
Thank you, Sherman. You said a lot. We get into this in a bit, because I agree with what everybody said. This little book kind of amazed me, and the way it thinks, it opens things up, and I think it's going to connect to everything everybody said in a minute. Evelyn, you had something.
Yes, sir. Good morning, family. Also, comment on the word training, because that word, it doesn't flow with me. And it's because I always thought you train animals. But I thought instead of using the word training, I always thought about the word teaching. So that kind of like just stuck out to me, the word training. That's all I want to make a comment on. And if I'm wrong, help me see clarity with that. Family.
Well, I agree with it when I first thought of it as well. The difference is, though, when I think of teaching, I think that's more in line with educating. The reason I like training is because of what you just said, is what you do with animals. There is a connection there. Has the African in America been trained, or has he been educated? What do we do on this phone? There was something that the writer said of this book I read. He was saying, you're born into this world not knowing your full identity and not knowing your who you are, and you gain that from your parents. And part of that is in your name, which we'll get to in a minute. How you're named and what you're named, and the energy in the name. We hadn't even talked about that portion of it. But the training aspect of it, especially those of you on the line that are from my generation, you remember the Dick, Jane, and Sally books. Those images didn't look like us. You remember all the early cartoons and all the early shows and comic books, the Supermans and the Snow White. None of those look like us. So part of that, your identity is in those images. Before you can even read, you relate to those images. But if those images are not of you, then you're being miseducated. You're being trained to fit into a world that is not. I get you guys to mute your phones, please. We're being trained to assimilate, if you will, into a world that is not our own. There's nothing about it that identifies with us. So it doesn't enhance who you are. It further makes you step back and look at, wait a minute, who am I and where do I fit into this? And especially as a child, And then you have that aspect of your parents who are in protective mode, knowing that they have to send you out in this world, and they, put that extra covering on it that teaches us to be obedient and go along with what is being said and what is being taught. It's not a bad thing at all. But we never, unless you get that from home, you never get any type of cultural anything from anybody outside of the home. So that's
Ron, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But when our
Go ahead.
parents would when our parents would show us stuff, they never said, "I'm training you." Our parents always say, "I'm teaching you how to cook this
that's
bread."
different.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
difference.
So
Your parents weren't training you. I'm not saying the parents were. I'm saying the other stuff you got outside of the home. And if you didn't get educated in the home, then that would definitely create a further gulf in your spiritual development. That's what I'm saying.
okay, I'm following you now. Okay.
Well, one of the things I do want to add is, Miss Evelyn, and what you stated about
You still talking, George?
that
I'm sorry, I missed that. I guess you cut out on me and maybe everybody else heard it. What would you please state that again?
No, we lost him.
I stated that by what Miss Evelyn stated, when she stated, I don't agree with the word train, brought into the concept of, paraphrasing, of course, teaching. And when you said that, you just changed the whole dynamics of it, that when you teach someone, or when I am being taught, you change the degree of intimacy that's going to take place. So I salute you in what you said. I support that, and I thank you. The other aspect of being trained or not being trained or being taught or being educated, you have to also factor in the environment that you come out of, and you also have to factor in genealogy. I'm not going to say I don't, but my sister, when I go to her house, she's not going to give me food on a paper plate. She's going to give it to me on china. She saw that. She saw mom and daddy interaction. She saw the interaction of the Watson side of the family, of men who produce don't eat off no paper plate. They eat off china, no matter what the situation is. She still buys into that concept of her grandsons, which are my great nephews. You produce, you're going to eat. Yet, in your producing, you're going to eat off china. If you ain't producing, you will eat, yet you're going to be off a paper plate. So, in what we grasp to develop our identity, you have to factor in the environment which the candidate comes out of, and you also have to incorporate the bloodline or genealogy in developing the identity. Thank you.
That buys into what I'm trying to say, George. In other words, how do we develop our consciousness? How do we develop what we are, what we value, if you don't go into your genealogy and your background? And what we're saying is America, outside of a European background, doesn't provide that opportunity. So it's not, if you're not trained, if you're not being offered the opportunity to be who you are, education is designed or was designed to show you who you are and enhance who you are, and give you an invitation to see your humanity through that, through my history, through my ancestors, through and yes, there will be some interaction with other cultures, but when do you get to see who you are? And America was intended, and I guess that is the word, intendedly designed to take that away and make you become what the European culture needed you to be. So what we are doing on this line, and I mentioned names before, names are a big part of that. I remember early in life when I was in middle school or high school, and someone coming to school with a different name, and the name stood out. And I remember I would think, okay, who are they, and what name were they given? Was that her grandmother's name? Was that or someone out of their past name? And if I could, I'd talk to the person who named you, if they had an African name or had a different name, because that wasn't in my generation. We were the Ronalds and the Carls and the Thomases because our parents were doing what they knew best to fit us into this society. But I do remember that when I saw or heard another name, it stood out to me. So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. What made it stand out? Why was I aware of that? And so it goes to show just how important what we're doing on this phone, because what education is designed to tap you into, as everybody said, I think, help you tap into who you are. And it is to use part of that knowledge, part of that internal part of you, to show you not only who you are, but to enhance it. It is the responsibility, and I say this, because a lot of our parents did tremendous jobs, but to teach us about our past and to teach us about who we are, and it is your responsibility to keep that thing going. So it is our responsibility to be spiritual. It is our responsibility to educate and tie those two worlds together. Have your child and even ourselves be proud of who we are. Even though you are different, it doesn't make you less than. But when you buy into someone else's system and you don't see yourself in it, there is a tendency to feel that I'm less than or I don't fit into this. And that's what, to me, is one of the big gulfs in this society. And I hope I'm not talking too much. Anybody else?
Not at all. Good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone. This is
Morning,
GC
George.
of Philly. Yeah, I just wanted to expound just a little bit in reference to what you mentioned about the book Know Thyself. But we have talked about in the past with regards to the Twa people. If we talk about the origins of humanity and looking at it from the beginning, I think nature, was a big part of our education in terms of, what our ancestors experienced, what they were taught by nature, and to be able to look at it with regards to the evolution of humanity, going back and appreciating, those learning experiences through education, then training may have proceeded, in a way where we are today. So I think, looking at nature, or appreciating that being a educational process in terms of our history is important, because that was, started, back, 5,000 years before the Common Era. But I just wanted to mention that, Ron, in terms of nature being a part of our education, which we've talked about in the past. I'm done.
That's a huge part of it, George. Is nature and again having the opportunity to see who you are and that everything that exists is you and you are it, and you're a part of this whole thing, and you're not just some to me feel like I'm just an isolated being that just been put here, brought here, trying to fit me in. When you're that done that way, you're being trained to fit in, to be of value to that host that seem to be in charge of things. But when you see that I am a part of nature, when you see that my name means something, it invites you to create a self-value. And that self-value is a journey within itself, that I want to not only know what my parents have taught me or what I'm learning in school or what I'm learning from my grandparents or from my church. I'm going to start my own journey because I want to see who I am. I'm picking up my own value system. I value who I am. And that is something that not only for us to discuss here, you'd be surprised to sit down with kids in a school system or kids I see at work and ask them about themselves and see how little they actually value themselves because no one has taught them that. Oh, that's what I have. That's kind of what I looking at the difference between being educated and trained. Education is a lot broader than buying a textbook. Education starts at birth.
I agree.
And what you read about Kemet, if we as we got into that, that's what kind of keeps me on this road to the education is I want to know how and what they did. I want to know because they are brought up. They study. Can you imagine being in elementary school and studying astrology? But what they were studying it was from the perspective that mathematics and astrology and all of this is who you are, looking at space and distances, looking at angles and all these things. That is who you are. That is what is inside of you. So I'm not picking up a textbook or I'm not looking at a European roadmap that is outside of me. I'm looking internally to see who I am and how all of this connects. And that's how I see the whole universe. I don't see it from anything external. I see it as being me. That fascinates me.
Yeah, Ron. And I concur because when we speak about education, we talk about being in oneness with the Creator, and at the same time having the characteristics of the Creator. So when we talk about characteristics, that's bringing us into an awareness in terms of how powerful we are when we come to that truth and knowing thyself. And as you mentioned in terms of the astronomy, again, looking at it from the cosmic aspect of the heavens or the ether, looking at it from the organic life. And I think that these are all, measures, that we now have the opportunity to dig in deeper as far as truly appreciating not just who we are, but the opportunity that we have to continue to grow. You know what I mean? In terms of our spiritual awareness. I'm done.
If I'm training you and you never get a chance to see yourself, you never get a chance to enhance who you are. In fact, it's buried inside of you, and no factor or nothing stimulates you to the fact to see, well, who am I? It is no different, as the writer put it, it is no different than putting a skirt on a dog and teaching him how to walk on his hind legs. He's still a dog, but he has no idea of who he is to have opportunity to behave like a dog. And the more and more he does that, the more and more he becomes dependent on you. and he loses his identity altogether. And that's how I'm defining being trained when we've been, our history is being pushed away, and we are being taught to assimilate into something that is not, we will certainly survive through it, but our culture, our spirituality, and our link to the ancestors and to the Creator will be lost and has been lost. And we're in the process of gaining that back. That is the difference.
Well, one thing just to bring to the table, and it's more than opinionated. In my experience, I would much rather be cultured than to be educated. When I buy into the educated arena, if I touch down in Philly, I'm going to Pat's to get a cheesesteak. Yet if I'm cultured and I drop down in Philly, I go to Max's to get a cheesesteak. If I'm educated, I'm going to go where the tourists go. Yet if I'm cultured, I go where the locals go. So,
George, I'm talking about something a lot deeper than that. I'm talking about
and
what's
Ron,
inside. But you
very
you
much so. What you're saying
you
is
mentioned
deeper.
something though. You mentioned something though, George. You mentioned something several times when you talk. You always say the Watson side of the family, this side of the family. So you know who you are. You have an opportunity to see that. That's what I'm talking about. What makes George George? What part of you sees who you are through both sides of your family? Have you ever just had the inkling to explore that? I like this part. I like that we do this. Where did this come from? Who started this tradition? Who are the Watsons? Where did this family come from? Oh, we came from this part of the country. What? Tell me more. That's what I'm talking about. Are we hungry for who? How did you gain your identity? Who taught you what God looked like? And did you ever push back on that and say, if that is the image of what God looks like, why do I keep feeling this in my bones? Where does this come from? Well, I need to start my own journey. I need to see. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. What strikes you at your core that makes you want to see who George is, and what pushes George to make the decisions he makes?
And Ron, I would agree with you. All I'm saying, just with me, I enjoy being cultured more than I enjoy being educated. I enjoy people who are cultured more so than the people who are educated. And that's just my walk in developing my identity. Put me around cultured people. You can get somewhere with cultured people. Yet if you get around some educated people in my walk, it's kind of hard to develop that kind of enthusiasm to accomplish something. And that's just my experience. Greater New Faith Foundation, we don't talk from the seminary. We talk from the cemetery. That's just me. I take a liking. I take a liking to GC from Philly more so than I take a liking to Mr. George out of Philly. So that's just my interpretation of what's being said and the development of my identity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Is it making sense?
Yeah, Ron. Yeah, again, this is George, and GC. Yeah, no, I can appreciate what's being expressed in terms of looking at it from the education perspective, and then looking at it from the cultural aspect. And in certain aspects, there's things that later on, in terms of what the book may teach or expound upon, but at the same time, when you go through your intuitive way of living, it's good to be able, when they say wisdom, to know the difference. And I think that, there's the academic intelligence that has its purpose, you know what I mean, which, I know we come to know. And then there's a spiritual intuition or a inner guidance that has significance also. So I can appreciate, as I said before, what, is being said. And I think that's the beauty of being able to, appreciate being aware in terms of our social interactions, or being aware in terms of just, how do we manage our lives in a way that we can live in this world, but don't have to be subjected to it in the way that it may be looked at from a Western society. Thanks for letting me share those thoughts. I'm done.
Thank you, George. I think this fits into where we are now. I hear Kamala saying in some of her commercials, move to a place where we are one people. We be the president for all the people, and people will not have to work several jobs, to that sort of thing. It to me, it is a voice that is calming. It is a voice that speaks to, lack of a better term, common people, not those who are so ambitious they want to take over the world, but to say that there is a place in this society, there is a place in this place called America, that everybody can be who they desire to be. And I think where we are as a group, as a people, as a spiritual entity for this universe, I think this is not coincidental, some of the things we see and talk about in the place that we are. So I just saw this kind of as an eye-opener to me as to some of the other things that we've talked about. And I certainly hope it made sense, especially looking at the names, looking at the name and because I remember not a lot, but one or two people when I was in college, one or two people changing their names, and again, those sort of things kind of stuck out to me. But it is important that we not lose our identity, and I'm talking as a people, we not lose our history. And part of our ambitions should be based on those things, knowing who we are and walking in that. So, yeah, the thing that I'm calling miseducation is the thing I'm saying that we have been trained to fit into something that has nothing to do with our identity. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with choosing a profession, and we have to do those things, but we don't have to lose ourselves in doing. That's all I have. If there are no questions, or comments. Okay. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you coming. And till the next time, have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.